I still remember the day I left my small town. The air was warm, but my hands felt cold as I stood at the bus station with my bag. It was not just the city I was heading to. It was the idea of a new life, maybe even a new version of myself. My town was quiet with the same faces and the same routines. People smiled at each other and everyone knew my name. But deep inside, I always wanted something more. I dreamed of learning English well, of speaking with people from around the world, of feeling free when I talked. But I was also scared. The city felt huge in my mind, full of tall buildings, busy streets, and fast-talking strangers. What if I couldn't keep up? What if people laughed at my mistakes? As the bus moved farther from home, I stared out the window and let my thoughts race. My heart was a mix of hope and doubt. That first night in the city, everything felt new and strange. The lights were bright and I could hear cars and voices outside my window. I lay on my small bed listening, feeling a little lost. I wanted to believe I could do it. I wanted to believe that learning English, really learning it, was possible for me. I didn't know where to start. But somewhere inside, a small voice whispered, "You just need to begin, one small habit at a time." I decided that this was not just a new city. This was my new chance. Chapter 1: The Habit of Listening Every Morning. Have you ever woken up and felt completely lost in a new place? That's how I felt on my first morning in the city. The sun was just rising, but the city outside was already alive. I could hear cars, people talking, and someone selling breakfast on the street. For a moment, I just lay there staring at the ceiling, wishing I could understand every sound and every word. Back in my town, mornings were quiet. I used to wake up to birds and the sound of my mother making tea in the kitchen. But here, everything was faster and louder. It made me feel both excited and afraid. I thought, if I want to belong here, I need to learn how to listen. So, I decided to start small. I took out my old phone and put on a pair of headphones. I remembered a friend once told me, if you listen to English every day, even just a little, it helps your brain get used to it. I found a short English podcast for beginners. The host's voice was calm and friendly. She talked about simple things, her morning, her breakfast, her plans for the day. At first, the words felt like a river, moving too fast for me to catch. But I tried to listen for words I knew: sun, coffee, smile. Every morning, I made this my habit. Before checking my messages, before getting out of bed, I would listen to 5 or 10 minutes of English. Some days, I understood almost nothing. On other days, a phrase or a word would jump out at me. I remember the first time I understood a whole sentence. The host said, "It's a beautiful morning. I hope you have a good day." It felt like she was speaking just to me. I smiled and repeated the sentence out loud, quietly at first, but it made me feel a little braver. This small habit started to change my mornings. Instead of feeling afraid or lost, I began to look forward to hearing something new each day. I started to notice things around me. The man at the bus stop talking on his phone in English, the children singing songs as they walked to school. Sometimes I would close my eyes and just listen, trying to guess what people were saying. Even if I couldn't understand everything, it made the city feel less scary. There were days when I felt frustrated. Some words sounded the same to me, and sometimes my mind wandered. I wondered, am I really learning anything? But little by little, I noticed changes. I could catch greetings, simple questions, and even some jokes. I began to recognize the rhythm of the language, the way voices rose and fell. It was like learning to hear music in a language I didn't know before. One morning, while waiting in line for breakfast, I heard someone order in English, "1 coffee please, no sugar." To my surprise, I understood every word. I wanted to turn around and say, "I know what you said," but I just smiled to myself. That small victory gave me hope. Maybe I could do more than just listen. Maybe I could start to join in. This daily habit didn't only help me with English, it made me feel more connected to the city. I started to understand the world around me, not just with my eyes, but with my ears, and slowly, my fear began to fade. Every morning with my headphones on, I felt like I was building a small bridge between myself and this new world. Without realizing it, that simple habit started to change the way I saw everything. I wanted to do more. I wanted to speak, not just listen, but the idea of talking to other people in English still made my heart beat fast. So I thought, maybe I could start in the safest place, talking to myself. Chapter 2: Speaking to Myself Out Loud. That evening, after a long walk through crowded streets, I looked at myself in the mirror and tried to smile. I could still hear English words from the podcast playing in my mind, soft, quick, and sometimes mysterious. My day had been full of listening, but my mouth felt heavy, as if it had forgotten how to move in new ways. I stood there, my reflection looking back, and I whispered, "Hello." It sounded strange at first. My voice was quiet, and I wondered if the people in the next room could hear me. "Hello," I tried again, a little louder this time. My heart beat faster. I was only talking to myself, but even that made me nervous. Still, I remembered the promise I made that morning. I wanted to be braver. I wanted to do more than listen. I wanted to speak. So, I began a little game. Each time I saw myself in the mirror, I would greet myself in English. "Good morning. How are you?" Sometimes I tried silly faces and funny voices. Sometimes I answered myself with, "I'm fine, thank you. And you?" It made me laugh, and suddenly the fear didn't feel so big. I realized that if I could talk to myself, maybe talking to someone else would not be so impossible after all. After a few days, I started talking out loud when I was alone in my room. I described everything I was doing in simple English. Now I am making tea. I am tired today. I need to do my homework. My sentences were short and my grammar wasn't always right, but I kept going. When I made a mistake, I tried again. Sometimes I even argued with myself in two voices, one asking questions, the other answering. It was like my own small English play. There were funny moments. Once I tried to say refrigerator and ended up laughing because it sounded so strange coming from my mouth. Another time I mixed up hungry and angry and told myself I am angry, when I really meant I am hungry. I smiled, shook my head, and said, "It's okay, you're learning." Slowly, I began to notice changes. Words came out more easily. My mouth felt less heavy, my voice less shy. I practiced in the shower while washing dishes or waiting for the bus. I would whisper sentences, repeat new words, or sing short English songs I had heard in the morning. Some days my confidence grew so much that I wanted to try speaking to real people. But most days I was still too shy. I told myself, "It's fine. Start with yourself. One day you will be ready." One night, I remembered something a teacher once told me. Don't be afraid to talk to yourself. Every word is practice. Those words echoed in my mind. I understood now that practicing alone was not just about language. It was about courage. Each small conversation I had with myself was another step forward, another way to prove to myself that I could do this even if no one else was listening. Over time, my English became my friend, not just a subject at school. I felt proud when I made a sentence that sounded right, and even prouder when I corrected myself. My mistakes turned into lessons. My shy voice turned into laughter. Talking to myself helped me find my own rhythm, my own way of speaking. But even as I grew more comfortable, I knew I needed more. Listening and speaking alone were good, but sometimes I forgot words or could not remember how to say things. I wanted to learn more vocabulary, to carry words with me wherever I went. I remembered a small notebook I used to write poems in as a child. What if I used a notebook, not for poems, but for new English words? That idea became my next small adventure. I could not wait to see where it would take me. Chapter 3: Carrying a vocabulary notebook. As I waited for the bus that cool morning, I held a small notebook in my hand. The city felt bigger than ever, with people hurrying past me, speaking different languages, and moving quickly to their destinations. I turned the notebook over in my palm, thinking of the stories it could hold. It was only a few days since I started talking to myself in English, but now I wanted to collect something new: words. I remembered how, as a child, I loved notebooks. I used to write little poems, secrets, and dreams in the back of my old school books. Now, standing in this new city, my hands holding a blank notebook, I decided to make it my special place for English words. I opened the first page and wrote the date at the top. My handwriting was a little shaky, but I didn't mind. The first word I wrote was brave. It was a word I heard on my podcast that morning. I wrote it in big letters and said it out loud. Brave. I tried to remember how the host said it with a smile in her voice. Underneath, I wrote a simple sentence: I am brave. For a moment, I felt stronger, just by seeing it on the page. Everywhere I went, I carried the notebook in my bag or in my pocket. When I heard a new word in the bus, in a shop, or on the street, I wrote it down. Sometimes I copied words from signs or menus. Other times I asked people, "What does that mean?" When I was too shy to ask, I would spell the word, how it sounded, and look it up later. My notebook slowly filled with little treasures, words like curious, delicious, adventure, and even funny words like umbrella and bubble. I was surprised at how much joy these new words brought me. At first, I worried I might forget them, but every evening, before bed, I would open my notebook and read through the day's words. I tried to use them in sentences, even if they sounded strange. Sometimes I wrote short stories with the new words. Other times, I just repeated them softly to myself, enjoying the feel of new sounds on my tongue. There were challenges, of course. Some words were hard to remember. I made silly drawings next to difficult words, hoping it would help me remember. Once I drew a little fish beside the word swim and a tiny sun next to bright. My notebook began to look like a secret diary, full of pictures, colors, and memories. The more I used it, the more I realized that learning words was not only about memory, it was about emotion. Every word had a story. Some words reminded me of my family, others of my new city, and some just made me laugh. Carrying my vocabulary notebook made every day feel like a small adventure. Even waiting for the bus became exciting. I looked for new words everywhere. I watched people, listened for English in unexpected places, and tried to capture words before they disappeared like smoke. I started to feel proud of my little book. When I felt lonely, I would take it out and read a few words, remembering the moments when I found them. One day, a woman on the bus noticed my notebook. She smiled and asked, "Are you learning English?" I nodded and showed her a page with my newest words. She pointed at one and explained its meaning, using easy English so I could understand. It was the first time I talked to a stranger about my learning. My face felt hot with shyness, but also bright with happiness. By the end of the week, my notebook was full of colorful pages, and my mind was full of new words. I realized I was not just learning a language. I was building my own world, one word at a time. My fear of forgetting slowly disappeared. If I forgot a word, I could always find it again in my notebook. My notebook became a friend, always ready to help. But with all these new words, I started to want something more. Words were wonderful, but they needed to come alive. I wanted to use them in real conversations, not just write them down. That's when I started to wonder, could I find one English friend in this big, busy city? Someone who would listen to me, talk with me, and help my words grow stronger. I didn't know how, but I was ready to try. My journey was just beginning, and I felt a new kind of hope growing inside me. Chapter 4: Finding One English Friend. What if just one person could change your world? I asked myself that as I watched the city wake up through my window. By now, I was used to the early morning sounds and my daily routine of listening to English, talking to myself, and filling my notebook with new words. But there was still an empty space inside me, a quiet wish to speak with someone who could understand, who would not laugh at my mistakes, and who might even teach me something new. Finding a friend in a new city felt almost impossible. Everyone seemed so busy, always hurrying past. Sometimes I would watch people laugh together at a cafe or chat on the train, and I wondered if I would ever be a part of that. I wanted to try, but the thought of starting a conversation in English made my stomach turn with nerves. One afternoon, I went to a small park near my apartment. I brought my notebook with me, just in case I heard any new words. The sun was shining, and children were playing under the trees. I sat on a bench and opened my notebook, pretending to write, but really, I was just hoping to feel less alone. That's when I heard someone nearby say, "Excuse me, is that an English notebook?" I looked up and saw a young woman smiling at me. She wore a bright red scarf and had kind eyes. For a second, I froze. My heart was racing, but I managed to nod. "Yes, I am learning English," I said, my voice small but steady. She sat down next to me and introduced herself. Her name was Mia, and she had moved to the city a year ago from another country. Her English was not perfect, but it was much better than mine. She told me she also used to feel lonely and shy when she first arrived. I felt a wave of relief, knowing someone else understood. We started to talk, slowly at first. Mia was patient and spoke clearly, sometimes repeating words or using gestures to help me understand. When I made mistakes, she smiled and gently corrected me. I showed her my notebook and she helped me with pronunciation and explained the meanings of some tricky words. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed speaking English with her, even when I got things wrong. Over the next few days, Mia and I met in the park after work. We set a small goal: speak only English together for 15 minutes each day. At first, it was hard. I worried about every sentence, and sometimes I forgot words or said the wrong thing. But Mia never laughed at me. She listened, helped, and sometimes told me about her own mistakes when she was learning. We shared stories about our hometowns, favorite foods, and funny things that happened to us in the city. Every time I spoke with Mia, I felt my confidence grow. My words became easier to find, and the fear in my voice slowly faded. There were days when I made many mistakes and felt frustrated, but there were also days when I surprised myself with a long sentence or a new word used correctly. Each conversation was a small step forward. I learned that friendship is more than just perfect language. It's about understanding, patience, and laughter. Sometimes we didn't know the right word, so we made up signs or drew pictures in the air. We even created small games, like trying to describe a word without saying it, or telling short stories using only the new words from my notebook. Mia became my first real friend in the city, and speaking English with her turned into my favorite part of each day. I no longer felt alone at the park bench. I had someone to share my journey with, someone who reminded me that learning was not a race, but an adventure. But even as I grew more comfortable with speaking, I realized something important. Mia and I sometimes watched short English videos together and tried to copy the way the people spoke. We laughed at our silly accents and practiced together. I saw how much it helped to watch and mimic real conversations. Suddenly, I was curious. What if I made this a daily habit too? What if I learned not just from friends, but from all the voices in the world? And so, with my new friend beside me, I was ready to try another step. My next habit was waiting, and I could already feel excitement building inside me. Chapter 5. Watching and Mimicking. Short videos. If I could be any movie character, who would I be? I thought about this one evening as I sat with Mia on the grass in the park. We watched the sky turn orange and purple. I closed my eyes for a second and imagined myself as someone brave and funny, speaking English perfectly in a big movie scene. It made me laugh to think about it, but it also made me want to try something new. Mia and I had started to watch short English videos on our phones during our meetups. At first, we chose simple ones, clips from movies, funny ads, short news reports, or quick interviews. The people in the videos spoke with different accents and used expressions I had never heard before. Sometimes they talked so fast that all the words seemed to run together. I had to listen hard, pausing and replaying many times just to catch a sentence or two. One day, Mia said, "Let's try to copy them, like actors." It sounded silly, but also exciting. So we picked a funny clip where someone said, "It's raining cats and dogs." We played it over and over, then took turns saying the line, trying to sound just like the actor. I felt shy at first, but Mia made a big show of pretending to dodge falling cats and dogs, and soon we were both laughing. That laughter made it easier to try again. The next day, I tried the same thing alone in my room. I found a short cooking video on YouTube. The chef spoke slowly, describing each step. I stood in front of my mirror and repeated his words. "Now chop the onions." I even used my hand as an imaginary knife. I made mistakes and sometimes the words sounded strange in my mouth. But the more I practiced, the better it felt. This became my new habit. Every day I picked one short video, just a few minutes long. I listened closely, then pressed pause, and tried to repeat what I heard, matching the voice, the speed, even the emotion. Sometimes I recorded myself on my phone and listened back. At first, it was hard to hear my own voice. Did I really sound like that? I laughed at my mistakes, but slowly, my confidence grew. I noticed that my pronunciation was getting clearer. The sounds of English were no longer so foreign. Some videos were about daily life, how to order food, how to greet someone, how to ask for help. Others were funny skits or interviews with singers and athletes. I loved hearing real people use the language, not just textbook sentences, but jokes, slang, and the little things people say every day. Sometimes I didn't understand everything, but that was okay. I wrote down new words or phrases in my notebook, then practiced them later with Mia. One evening, I watched a short video where a woman described her favorite memory. She spoke slowly with a soft accent, and I could feel the emotion in her words. I repeated her sentences, trying to match her feeling, not just her words. I realized that English was not only about grammar and vocabulary, it was about telling stories, sharing feelings, making someone smile. Mia and I even started to record our own short videos for practice. We pretended to be news reporters or movie stars. We made silly faces and tried different accents. Sometimes we shared our recordings and gave each other tips, but mostly we just had fun. It didn't matter if we made mistakes. Every try was another step forward. There were days when I felt frustrated, when my tongue twisted, or when a sentence just wouldn't sound right. But I remembered the first time I listened to English and understood only a few words. Now, with each video, I understood more and felt less afraid to speak out loud. Mimicking videos taught me to use my voice in new ways. It helped me hear the rhythm of English and learn how real people speak. It made learning fun, not just hard work. And best of all, it showed me that I could become anyone I wanted, even the star of my own English journey. As the days passed, I started to believe that I could really improve, step by step. But I also realized that big progress comes from small, simple actions. I wondered, what if I set just one tiny goal each day? Could that make an even bigger difference? I was ready to find out. My next habit was waiting, and this time, I wanted to see how far a little daily goal could take me. Chapter 6. Setting one tiny daily goal. Can I really get better? Just a little, every day? I asked myself this question as I lay in bed one night, my notebook full of new words resting on my pillow. Some days my learning felt exciting. Other days I felt tired, slow, or stuck. It was easy to feel overwhelmed by how much I still didn't know. But I remembered something Mia once said. You don't need to climb the whole mountain at once. Just take one step at a time. So the next morning, I decided to try something different. Instead of pushing myself to do everything, listen, speak, write, and watch videos all at once, I would set just one small English goal for each day. Something so tiny, I couldn't fail. On the first day, my goal was simple: learn 3 new words and use them in sentences. I picked delight, journey, and crowded from my notebook. I practiced saying each one out loud. Then, as I walked to the bus stop, I spoke quiet sentences to myself. This city is crowded. My English journey gives me delight. I felt a little silly, but also proud. At the end of the day, I checked my goal off with a small smile. The next day, I chose a different goal. Ask one question in English to a stranger. It seemed scary at first, but I kept the question simple. In a coffee shop, I asked, "What time do you close?" The man answered, and I understood him. My voice was shaky, but I did it. That tiny success felt huge, like winning a small prize. Each day, I picked a new goal. Sometimes it was watching one short English video and repeating 3 sentences. Other times it was writing a 5-sentence diary entry or reading a simple English news article. Some days my goal was just to say hello to someone in English or try to order food without using my own language. At first, the goals felt almost too easy, but that was the point. Achieving a small goal every day built my confidence. I started to look forward to picking my goal each morning. Sometimes I would ask Mia for ideas, and she would challenge me with something new, like telling a joke in English or teaching her a word from my language. There were days when I didn't feel like learning at all. Maybe I was tired or work was stressful, or I felt like my English was not improving. On those days, I made my goal even smaller. Just write 1 sentence or listen to 1 song in English. I told myself, a small step is still a step. Each day, even a tiny bit of progress counted. Over time, my collection of daily goals grew. I looked back at my notebook and saw pages full of check marks, notes, and memories. I realized that I was learning much more than English. I was learning how to be patient with myself, how to celebrate small wins, and how to keep going even when things were hard. Sometimes I wrote down a favorite quote I found in a video or from Mia. One stuck with me. Success is the sum of small efforts, repeated day in and day out. I wrote it at the top of my notebook and read it every morning before choosing my goal. As my goals grew, so did my courage. I found myself trying things I never would have done before. Calling to make an appointment in English, helping a lost tourist, or reading a menu without feeling afraid. Each tiny goal was a brick, and together they built a stronger, more confident version of me. Now, when I thought about my journey, I felt less afraid of the big picture. I didn't need to worry about becoming fluent overnight. All I needed was to keep moving, one small step after another. But there was still one thing missing. I realized I needed a way to remember my journey, to see how far I had come. That night, I opened my notebook and began to write about my day. Not just words, but my thoughts and feelings, all in simple English. It was my first English diary entry, and it felt both strange and wonderful. Maybe this could become my final daily habit, the habit of reflecting and journaling each night to bring my story full circle. Chapter 7. Reflecting and Journaling in English Each Night. The city lights outside my window looked different that night. Softer, almost gentle, like they were telling me to slow down. After a busy day full of listening, speaking, learning new words, and trying my tiny daily goal, I felt tired, but in a good way. As I sat on my bed, my notebook in my lap, I let my thoughts drift back through the day. I realized there was a new habit I wanted to keep, writing about my day in English. At first, the idea made me nervous. What if I made too many mistakes? What if my sentences were too simple, or I forgot words? But then I remembered how all my other habits had started, with a little courage and a lot of patience. So I opened my notebook to a fresh page, took a deep breath, and wrote, "Today, was a good day. The words felt strange and exciting. I tried to remember as much as I could. I wrote about the man at the bus stop who smiled and said good morning. I wrote about practicing new words with Mia and the funny moment when we both tried to pronounce vegetable and ended up laughing. I even wrote about my small daily goal, how I managed to order tea in English and the woman at the shop understood me right away. At first, my sentences were short and sometimes awkward. I used simple words and sometimes repeated myself. But as I kept writing, I found that my mind started to relax. I was not writing for a teacher or for a grade. I was just writing for myself. My journal became my safe space, a place where I could be honest about my feelings, celebrate my progress, and even talk about my mistakes without fear. Some nights I wrote only a few lines. I felt tired today, but I am proud. I learned the word confidence. I want to feel confident tomorrow. Other nights I found myself writing whole paragraphs about things that happened, conversations I had, or thoughts I wanted to remember. I started to use new words from my notebook, mixing them into my stories. I could see my progress right there on the page, sentence by sentence. Reflecting and journaling at night helped me see things more clearly. On days when I felt frustrated or slow, I could look back at older entries and remember all the tiny steps I had taken. I read about the first time I understood a sentence in a podcast, the first time I spoke to a stranger, or the first word I wrote in my notebook. I saw how much I had grown, not just in English, but as a person. Sometimes I wrote about my dreams and hopes for the future. One day I want to travel to another country and speak English with new friends. Or, I hope I can help someone else learn, just like Mia helped me. On the hardest days, my journal was a place to be honest about my fears. I felt shy today. I made a mistake and someone laughed, but I will try again tomorrow. Each entry became a part of my journey. The habit of journaling made my learning real. It was proof that every day mattered, that every small step was worth it. I no longer felt lost or alone in the city. I carried my story with me, on paper and in my heart. Over time, writing in English at night became something I looked forward to. Even when I was tired, I knew that a few quiet minutes with my notebook would help me end the day feeling proud and hopeful. My journal was my friend, my teacher, and my reminder that progress is made slowly, but it is always real. And as I wrote each night, I discovered something beautiful. My mistakes were not failures. They were simply signs that I was trying, learning, and moving forward. Every sentence was a step, and every story was another brick in the foundation of my new life. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I felt ready for it. With my habits growing stronger each day and my story unfolding, I was no longer just a person from a small town trying to learn English. I was a part of the big city now, and my journey was only beginning. But even as I closed my notebook for the night, I knew this was not the end. It was simply the next page. Tomorrow, I would wake up, put on my headphones, and start again, with a little more hope, a little more confidence, and a heart full of new words ready for the world. And as I sit quietly, closing my notebook for the night, I realize how each small habit has gently led me here. Looking back now, I can hardly believe how far I have come. When I first arrived in this city, I was full of doubts and fears. The idea of learning English felt like climbing a mountain with no end, but day by day, my small habits started to change everything. Listening to English each morning helped me open my mind to new sounds. Speaking to myself made my voice braver, even when I was shy. My notebook filled up with words and memories, turning every new word into a small victory. Making a friend like Mia gave me courage to use my English, and together we learned and laughed at our mistakes. Watching and copying short videos made speaking fun, while tiny daily goals kept me moving forward, even on difficult days. Journaling at night helped me see how much I was growing, not just in language, but in confidence and hope. There were hard days, yes, but the habits I built helped me get back up each time I fell. Now, English is not just something I study, it's a part of my life. I know I will always keep learning, one small step at a time. If you are listening now, I want to encourage you. Start with just one habit. You do not have to be perfect or fast. Progress is quiet and steady. Trust yourself, keep going, and celebrate each small step. You never know how far it will take you. Thank you for walking with me on this journey. Our stories are still being written, one day at a time.